So how did Egypt, a desert nation, suddenly become a new factory for the world? It's a pretty wild story. We're talking about one of the biggest economic surprises in recent memory. I mean, how does a country that was getting slammed for building roads to nowhere all of a sudden become this huge magnet for global manufacturing? Let's dig in and break down exactly how this happened. You probably remember the headlines, right? Just a few years back, all the talk about Egypt was about these massive, seemingly pointless mega projects, brand new cities in the middle of the desert, huge empty highways that everyone was calling roads for no one. And while pretty much everyone was debating the cost and, well, the point of it all, the economic numbers started telling a totally different story. And I mean totally different. All of a sudden, exports just jumped. Factories started popping up everywhere. And look at this, the investment numbers are just staggering. Annual industrial investment went from basically nothing to between $10 and $12 billion. You've got major global companies, big investment funds, all of them starting to shift their supply chains, and they're all looking at places like Cairo and Suez. So the big question is, what on earth changed? Yeah, this is what we're talking about, a genuine economic surprise. Those roads that everyone made fun of, they started humming. They became the arteries, the lifeblood of a new production hub. And let's be clear, this wasn't about good feelings or anything like that. This was driven by a cold, hard shift in economic calculations. And that's the thing. This wasn't some happy accident. It wasn't a coincidence. What looked like an overnight miracle was, well, it was a plan. It was the result of years of very deliberate and, very expensive strategic planning. The rest of us just started paying attention when the timing suddenly became perfect. Okay, so to really get this, we have to look underneath the hood, at the foundation that nobody was really seeing. See, Egypt's strategy wasn't about inventing something new out of thin air. It was more like they had all these incredibly powerful puzzle pieces, all these amazing assets, but they were just scattered all over the board. The plan was to finally connect them, to snap them all together into one powerful machine. And that's the key thing to remember here. These strengths, they're not new. I mean, Egypt has always been at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa. It's always had a huge domestic market with over 100 million people. It's had great trade deals with the EU, Africa, and the US. And of course, the Suez Canal, right? The world's ultimate shipping shortcut. The problem was, they were all operating in their own little silos. They weren't an integrated system. They just weren't working together. So here's the playbook. This is the 4-step plan that connected all those dots. First step, build that massive national road network we talked about. But here's the trick. It was specifically designed to link the ports to where the future industrial zones would be. Step 2, they poured money into modernizing the seaports so they could handle a huge increase in global trade. Step 3, and this is crucial, they secured the energy supply. You can't have heavy industry without reliable electricity. And the final step, the masterstroke, they linked everything, the roads, the ports, the power, to brand new industrial zones that were ready to go. They solved that classic investor headache where you can find land but no power, or power but no roads. Okay, so that's the plan on paper. But did it actually work? Well, let's look at where the strategy hit the real world. You can see the results plain as day when you look at how some key sectors were totally transformed. Let's start with agriculture. For the longest time, Egypt was really dependent on food imports. So what did they do? They launched this unbelievable land reclamation project. We're talking about adding over 2 million fadans, and a fadan is pretty close to an acre, so that's a ton of new farmland, irrigated and ready to go. This built a whole new foundation, not just for their own food security, but for exports. And now, agricultural exports are pulling in close to $4 billion a year. That's a huge turnaround. Or how about the auto industry? I mean, that's a really tough test for any manufacturing economy, right? And what do we see? Major players like Hyundai and Nissan are expanding their local assembly lines. Stellantis, Fiat and Peugeot, they're restarting production. But the big one, the really symbolic moment, was Mercedes-Benz coming back. That sent a massive signal to the world. It said, Egypt isn't just a place to sell cars anymore, it's a place to build them. This plan was so ambitious, it even redefined the Suez Canal itself. Think about it. For decades, the canal was just a hallway, a transit corridor. Goods just passed through. So the big smart question someone finally asked was, wait a minute, why does everything just pass through here? Why isn't anything being made here? And the answer to that question was the Suez Canal Economic Zone. It's pulled in over $10 billion in investment, turning that simple waterway into a massive integrated hub for making and moving stuff. So all this work, It was like setting up a massive line of dominoes. They laid all the groundwork, got everything perfectly in place. But what was the finger that pushed the first one over? What really lit the fuse? It was global chaos. All of Egypt's quiet preparations suddenly collided with a world that was desperately searching for exactly what they had just finished building. Just think about the world after 2020. It was a mess. The pandemic completely broke global supply chains. The war in Ukraine sent energy markets into a tailspin. All of a sudden, having your entire manufacturing base in Asia felt really risky and really far away. So the search was on for a stable, reliable alternative. Companies weren't just looking for a place to sell their products. They were looking for a safe harbor, a place to actually make them. And then, on top of all that, you have the US-China trade war. This created an incredibly powerful, purely financial reason to make a change. Look at the numbers. If you make your stuff in China and sell it in the US, you're getting hit with tariffs around 30%. But if you make that same stuff in Egypt, you can get it into the US with tariffs under 10% because of special trade deals. For any company making things in China for the American market, the math wasn't just simple, it was screaming at them. And the result of that simple math? A flood of new interest. It was immediate, and it was dramatic. Suddenly, for a lot of Chinese manufacturers, looking at Egypt wasn't just a good idea, it was a strategic necessity. And we can see exactly where that money is flowing. Look, about 2/3 of all this new Chinese investment is heading straight for the Suez Canal economic zone, that ready-made hub we were just talking about. It's the perfect spot. The other third, it's spreading out to other industrial cities across the country, which is basically a huge validation of that entire national infrastructure plan. And listen, this isn't just theoretical. This is happening right now. We have a quote here from Mustafa Ibrahim. He's the VP of the Egyptian Chinese Business Council. He says they are seeing 20 to 30 Chinese companies seriously looking to expand into Egypt this year alone. He even mentioned that they're getting a new Chinese delegation visiting pretty much every 10 days, looking at everything from textiles to electronics. So let's just pull this all together for a second. What we're really looking at here is a kind of perfect storm, but in a good way. You have years and years of careful domestic strategic planning that suddenly smacks right into this once-in-a-generation moment of global economic chaos and realignment. And that right there is the key. That's the main takeaway. Egypt didn't just survive the recent global turmoil, it positioned itself to actually use the energy from that storm. Because they had the infrastructure ready to go, right when the world was scrambling for a new plan, they were able to turn a massive global crisis into an incredible national opportunity. And the wins for Egypt are pretty obvious, right? We're talking about new jobs for its people, a huge influx of foreign investment, a desperately needed flow of US dollars into the economy. And maybe the most important thing of all, it's building a foundation for a much stronger, more diversified industrial future. So those roads for no one, they're now the arteries of global trade. All that quiet, behind-the-scenes planning has finally met a very loud, very chaotic world. And all of this leaves us with one big question to think about. Is this just a flash in the pan, a lucky break, or are we actually witnessing the rise of a true dark horse in the battle of the global economy?